good.
Well, hey. Hello, everybody. Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I'm Wendy Stuart.
And I am Tym Moss.
And guess what's different about today? Tym Moss is back. I'm so happy. Oh, my God. Tym Moss is in the hot seat. We're so happy to have you back.
I'm so grateful to be back right now. Right. Believe me. It's been a month.
It's been a month. I know. Like every show that I've done and everybody who watches, I'm like, Tim's not here, but we're all thinking about him. But
thank you.
Really, really cool to have you back in the hot seat. And then to be at the Glam Awards with you on Saturday night, where, of course, we were nominated for a Glam Award, but
for this show.
For this very show. And a lot of people that were there, of course, have been on this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on my other podcast for the LGBTQ community, TriVersity Talk. So, yeah, in many ways, the Glam Awards is like old home week. But what I love about it is the costuming.
Oh, my God.
Who needs Fashion Week if you have the Glam Awards?
Yeah, just go to the Glam Awards.
Right?
It covers all the bases.
The
creativity, the fashion. It's drag from, Maybelline can put everybody that works for Maybelline can put their kids through college that night.
No, I don't think Maybelline has enough pigment in it. We're talking heavy pigment. We're talking airbrush makeup, gorgeous styling of the hair, the clothing. My God, it's like the Emmys or the Academy Awards.
Yeah, it's become this huge event here in New York.
Yeah.
And the floor show, the actual presentation and the show and the singing and the performances are astonishing.
Yeah, they are, Tim.
They're really incredible.
I know. It's like watching like one of those dance shows, think you can dance, where they have the groups come out and everyone is so amazing. The singing and all of it. There's all kinds of different categories. We absolutely love it.
But it's for New York City nightlife.
Yes.
Primarily the drag community, but just anybody that's involved in New York City New York City nightlife. Yeah.
I have to tell you, one of the most inspiring things to me, just because we talk about humans and people, humanitarian things. So many of the kids that come to this thing, done to the nines. I mean, it's like you can't believe they would dress like this, right? And I'm like, what category are you nominated for? Oh, I'm not in any category. I'm here to support my friend. Right. How brilliant is that? That we have that. People can say what they want about this next generation, but completely.
Oh yeah, I love this next generation.
You do, right?
On. They're really, really quite incredible. And again, I interviewed a lot of people that night, and you have like younger fashion designers and people who do makeup and others that do choreography, and they're just helping each other out and working together. And that's what I really appreciated about it, was the community, right? The community that was there, that showed up that night.
Whole sense of community that we have. So, we have been featuring here at Pangea. It's called the Incubator Series, and it's workshop productions that are so phenomenal. I just saw Penny Arcade do the next sequel in her show, which is also her book. It's called The Art of Becoming, and that was here. She did 2 different workshops with the same show, but now she's off to Venice to write more, which is really exciting. We love our creative community here. And speaking of creative community, we have an amazing documentary filmmaker with us today, who also is an actress, who also is a speaker, because when you're in the arts, people are very versatile and they can do a lot of things. How incredible to use who you are and what you're about to get your message across. Our guest today did a documentary called When the Bow Breaks. Okay, it's narrated and executive produced by Brooke Shields. It's what I call the elephant in the room, what we call postpartum depression, or, for lack of a better word, and being a mom myself, what happens if you don't bond with your baby, right? Society tells you, oh, this is going to be so joyous. What do we call it? Our little bundle of joy. What happens when the little bundle of joy is not making you feel joyful? What happens when you are so depressed you can't get out of bed? Well, I think this is something we all need to talk about. Please put your hands together for Tanya Newbould.
Yay, Tanya.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Wendy and Tim. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making this film. I think what's so interesting, and I said it in your intro, we have our backgrounds as actors and what we do is that, but as we pay it forward, I mean, look at what you're doing. You created you're a speaker.
Yes.
We get the word out there. So you are LA based and you started out acting in this business.
I did. I'm from England. I grew up in Michigan, and at the ripe old age of 21, moved out to LA to pursue acting, which I was very blessed and fortunate I did. I've done over 20 films, commercials, TV shows, worked with some really phenomenal actors and directors, everyone from Kelsey Grammer to Ray Fiennes, Anthony Hopkins. And so I've had Nick Cage, Family Man is one of my favorite movies I got to do. All of these directed by Brett Ratner, and love acting. It was what I thought I would always do. But then after going through what I navigated, which we're going to get into, I recognized that God had a very different calling for my life. But all of that prepped me for who I was meant to become.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned you were born in England. How long were you there?
Pardon?
How long were you there in England?
Until I was 2.5. So if anything, I have a Midwestern accent where people go.
Right.
Yes.
There's no English accent.
Well, I'm originally from Indiana, and that's where I just got back from.
Fabulous.
So what part of Michigan? Where in Michigan?
I grew up in Sterling Heights area, which is about 30 miles northwest of Detroit.
Yeah, outside Detroit, right.
Yeah.
So tell us about what it was like growing up there. Were either of your parents in the arts? Did they
I'm adopted. Interestingly enough, I'm adopted. I was adopted in England. My mom actually was a painter, and my father was a PhD research scientist from Oxford. So brilliant man. And I grew up in Michigan and was there, and then decided that I loved the art so much that I would move out to California and pursue acting.
Yeah.
Wow. Which is not always easy. I was telling Tim, you're an amazing PR person. All the women he has sent me, they're not only brilliant, they're all beautiful. Yeah. I told him that in an email. You are a fantastic type. So I can see you hit LA and then you were on fire. But you've read out something really interesting, that there was a higher cause for you. Not that acting's amazing, and we all know celebrity is one of the best ways to get your points across or your agenda. But again, look what ended up happening to you.
Yeah, not something I would have chosen for my life, and this is what I really want to express. Human beings, we come here to learn and to grow. And I don't think anyone escapes unscathed. Everyone goes through trauma. Everyone goes through growth opportunities. And what can seem like it is the worst thing that's ever happened to you often ends up being your greatest gift. And so those of you listening that are either in a situation, have gone through a situation, or are entering into one, instead of looking at it as, oh my God, something's wrong, which is exactly how I felt. What's wrong with me? This is bad.
Right.
Begin to look at, what am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to grow through this? And the more you focus on that, you really grow into who you're meant to become on your soul's journey.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, if we can focus a little bit more on your acting.
Yes.
Starting there, tell us about some of the projects that you were involved with Nicolas Cage and Kelsey Grammer.
Sure. Oh my gosh, thank you. I love talking about it. It's so fun.
And we love listening about it too.
Give us the Hollywood dish.
The dish.
Well, I will give you the Hollywood dish. I came in through the back door. In other words, I started out as an extra in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Ended up being Keanu Reeves' stand-in, which, I mean, look at me and look at Keanu.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, I got to stop you right there. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
They put a wig on you, or what?
I wore a black headband and had the same outfit, and ended up working. I was Marilyn Monroe in heaven. I used to do Marilyn Monroe, not huge shock, when I was younger. And then at the very end of the film, the director, Peter Hewitt, said, he had beautiful English accent. He's like, we need a rock and roll reporter. Can you write the dialogue? And so I wrote out dialogue. I purposely made myself after the first AD because I figured I had a better chance of staying in the film. And it stuck, and I got my SAG card. And from there, I was off and running. And then I was in Sister Act 2 with Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then I went on to do The Family Man with Nicolas Cage, Red Dragon with Ray Fiennes and Anthony Hopkins, and was in X-Men The Last Stand with Kelsey Grammer's assistant, and then a movie named Skyline where I was eaten by an alien.
You have really run the gamut here. Right. My God, there's been like a little something in every film that you've been in. They're all different. Your family had to be incredibly proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I think they were. You know, I'm an only child. Unfortunately, both my parents are no longer here, but I'm sure they were. And, you know, I don't think much of it because to me, I never like made it as far as like you would know me as a household name. I was always grateful to work. I did commercials. I used to model. I was in pageants. I, you know, did all of those types of things. But it was a lot of fun. The business is not an easy business.
Oh, you think?
We all know. So you have to have a very strong constitution and really know who you are and have a very strong focus to really navigate it because there's a lot more downs than ups for some. But if it's your passion and if it's what you love to do, then it's wonderful.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. And you are where LA is where it's at. I mean, you've got to be in LA to do that amount of work for commercials and film and television.
The thing about becoming pregnant when you do this, right? When you, my background's similar to you, you know, the pageants, the modeling, the acting, the whole thing. And I waited a very long time before I made a conscious decision. I didn't have that burning, oh my God, time's running out. I need to have a baby. As I said to Tim, none of my friends that I'm the only one I have a 31-year-old daughter, but at the time it was just a logical decision, maybe a selfish one. Who's going to take care of me when I'm old? Maybe I should think about doing this. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be cast in anything. Because you know this, Tanya, when you start quote unquote showing, I hid my pregnancy to my 6th month. I did a Duncan Hines commercial and I hid my pregnancy, and the stylist was watching me change. She's like, "You're pregnant. Don't let the director find out." Yeah. Well, on the set there was buzz because I was looking a little pregnant, and then someone came back and said to me, "Are you pregnant?" I said, "No, I had the baby and I still haven't lost the weight. I'm so embarrassed." And they went to the director and he said, "Don't worry, we'll make the counter right for my Duncan Hines cookies. We'll make it a little higher." Oh my God. And Tim, that day my heart was racing on that set. I had a head, you know, the kind of headache, the tension headache.
Yes.
Because I was so afraid of being outed. And I completely lied about the state I was in. You're an actress.
But the thing is they could have done the same thing for the pregnancy. Just put the counter up. Right. But they would probably have dismissed you rather than saying that it's leftover baby.
Right. As Tanya knows, I was told there's a liability about hiring somebody pregnant.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I was
work long hours and you know, a lot can happen, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
well, that industry, and again, especially LA, it has a lot to do with body image.
No, definitely,
and to choose to reproduce or to get pregnant and have a child, that's a huge, major decision in that industry.
I think so.
I agree with you. And I actually wasn't going to do it. My husband's younger than I am. And I went to a place of, I have fur babies. I'm an actor. It's all good. And literally I was 40 years old. And my husband all of a sudden said, "I think I want a baby." And I was like, "What? Now? Are you crazy?
Are you out of your mind?"
Yeah. And so I actually got pregnant naturally at 42. So
that's amazing. I was 39. And then after that, couldn't. But the 42 without in vitro. So it was supposed to happen.
How was your pregnancy? How did you get along with it?
So I had a great pregnancy. We had gone to Thailand for a trip. And so one night in Bangkok, it's not just a song.
It's like a year in any other place.
Right. And so I came back and found out I was pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I had a wonderful pregnancy. But I will tell you this, at about 4.5 months pregnant, I found myself hysterically sobbing on the kitchen floor, hands and knees, snot coming out of my nose, and thinking, I don't think this is normal. And at the time, I was smart enough to go, I'm a big advocate of therapy. If you need it, do it, go.
Yeah.
Find someone who will take care of you, find someone to talk to. And so I went to therapy, and it was fascinating to me because she said to me, I suspect when your mom was 4.5 months pregnant with you is when she realized she couldn't keep you. And it was like this, like someone had stabbed me with a knife.
Oh my God.
Isn't that interesting? So I think there's a cellular memory, of course, which makes sense, but it's also categorized as antenatal depression. Having depression while you are pregnant.
While you're pregnant.
Yes, because what most people don't know, and I'm actually working on doing a TED Talk on this, is that there's actually 9 levels of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. It's put under the umbrella of postpartum depression, but there are many different assets that go along with each aspect of it.
Can I just back up? When you found out you were pregnant, what was your reaction? Were you happy? Were you looking forward to it? Okay.
Yeah,
I was. I wanted a baby, but my husband being younger didn't for so long that I let it go. But and the whole idea of getting pregnant at first, I was like, and with acting, oh God, how is this going to affect everything? Right. But then it did click in, like, what a gift.
Yeah.
It's a much larger gift than having a career. So I was very happy to be pregnant. So that's why when I found myself crying like this, I was like, what is wrong?
What is this?
Well, but again, a pregnancy, firstly, women, as you both know, go through so many biological changes constantly throughout your life. And now at the age of 42, it's going through a complete different new change that you've never experienced before. And that would be, I mean, mentally and emotionally traumatizing.
And also to Tim's point, because you just said it, at the age of 42. Now, this is what I wonder, because I was up there and there were people in my birth class that were 41 and 42. I wonder if these late stage pregnancies do different things to your body than, say, like a 30-year-old or what do you think on that, Tanya?
Well, I would agree with that, because biologically, really, if you look at the history of beings, human beings, women, we are really meant to bear children more in an earlier part of life, in your 20s.
I agree.
Getting older. I mean, I did not realize, which I think actually at the time was a blessing, that less than 10% of women over the age of 40 can get pregnant naturally. I had no idea. Which I think was great, because our minds are so powerful. I think if I knew that, there would be a lot of, I can't make this. This is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And listen, it didn't happen for 2 years. And I'll never forget, after 2 years of trying, saying a prayer. And I said, well, God, if you want me to have a baby, you're going to have to help make this happen, because it's not happening. And then less than 3 months later, I was pregnant.
Yeah, that is really amazing. People don't realize how hard it is. You're right. And that baby was given to you as a gift.
Yes, she was. Yeah, and she is. And also, let's talk about the fact of women really trying to get pregnant in vitro, naturally, it doesn't matter. That level of disappointment that you experience every 28 days, every 30 days, where you're like, maybe, and then you get your period. And it's like, it's a constant roller coaster, and you try all the things and the vitamins and the this and the lay in this position, do this,
acupuncture, all of it.
All of the things. There's so much involved in having, it's such a miracle having a baby in itself. It is such a miracle. So there's so much involved. There's a lot of emotion involved. Then you add in hormones, you add in situations, if you're happily married, if you're not married, if you love your husband, if it's someone you actually maybe didn't want a baby with, there's so many aspects that are so much more than just having a baby, right?
But you know, Tanya, look at what we're compared to, right? You're expected, I look at women on the subway in New York out to here on the way to their job. All right.
Yeah.
I am sorry. That is a horrible state to have to be in. And we've all done it. I did it. But you know what? Now thinking about it, it's like, oh my God, I'm on the subway. I'm out to here. Nobody will give you a seat.
Right.
You're expected to show up at your job, no matter how exhausted. If you remember the last couple of months, right, sleeping with like 8 pillows under your belly.
Oh my gosh, yes, the long pillow. I had a long.
You had the long pillow. You don't have enough sleep, and yet in our society now, the way because women, we can do it all. That is true, but you know what? I've become really different in my thinking. I'm like, God, this was like torture. And I did it from when I really started to get big. What the hell was I thinking? And I don't know. That still doesn't sit right with me. I'll just tell you.
Well, it being a patriarchal society,
right.
Yes.
That has a lot to do with it. A lot to do with the rules that that pertain to that, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, and I may ruffle some feathers saying this, but
Let's ruffle away.
I mean, women's rights, like women have fought so hard for women's rights. And part of that patriarchal, say the word for me, Tim.
Patriarchal.
Thank you. Society is that men go, okay, you want to be equal? Then you go ahead and you do this. And to a certain extent, that's wonderful. But then there are those times where it would be so nice if they're like, you know what? You are pregnant. You are going through this. We're going to be gentle and kind. We're going to support this. So good and bad to both, right?
Right. It's a tough decision, and it puts you in a crazy place.
But again, just like the biological changes, the hormones, I can't imagine what your human body goes through during that time period.
Oh, it is.
What were some of the things that you experienced?
I mean, I was very lucky. I had a very, what I would say, easygoing pregnancy. I know I have friends who dealt with diabetes, preeclampsia, many different things. I remember though, for the first 12 weeks, because basically they say that's when the body is deciding whether to keep or let go of the pregnancy. Because when a baby is aborted in the first 12 weeks naturally is a miscarriage, is more the body saying this is not a viable pregnancy. This is not
making the decision for you. The body makes it decision.
But is that a combination, biological, mental, emotional? I mean, all of that?
I mean, it absolutely can be. Absolutely. If you are mentally not doing well or don't want, you can create so much stress and strife in your body, right? So I remember every week there was, I used to get an email, and I forget what it's called now. It's like, your week number 2 of pregnancy week. And every week I would read it like, okay, I'm closer and closer to 12 weeks. And once I got past that, I remember having a lot more ease. I had morning sickness from week 7 to 17, where I couldn't even get out of bed without my husband making me a slice of toast. And I felt like it's like having the hangover without having the fun. It was just
raspberry tea, raspberry leaf tea.
Oh, I never did that. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's another tip. It's interesting because I was 3 months pregnant out in California at a sales meeting for Warner's underwear. I was an underwear model, 3 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And I know. Wow. And I didn't, it was a little bump. That was it. And the designer said to me, she says, "Oh, your boobs are so nice and full." And I'm like, oh my God, if she only knew.
Right.
Yeah, that was it. I had to finally tell them, because what do they say? You pop after 3 months. It just kind of pops, the belly button and everything. I couldn't hide it anymore.
It's so sad that women have to hide these things. This beautiful time of their life.
Absolutely.
Just to get a job.
Right.
Well, especially sorry, I cut you off, Tim, in the corporate world, right? If you're a boss and or a C-suite level executive, women tend to not want to share that. I do think it's gotten better. I do.
Yeah, I agree.
We've grown as a society, But, there's still so much stigma and judgment with pregnancy and with postpartum depression.
Right. Yeah.
Because once again, it's all about money, all about the business, all about the bottom line, all about this.
Right.
And if they think, oh, you're not going to be here for a few weeks when you give birth, oh my gosh, that's a problem. It's for our bottom line. And I get so tired of that.
Yeah.
Why we can't focus more on the humanity?
I know. Well, that is very indicative of our society even today, right? It's, there's so much division. There's so much judgment. There's
non-empathetic.
No
empathy.
Hopefully we will grow into a kinder and more forgiving and accepting society across the board.
So too.
Well, I think because like your message and now I want to get up to like, your birth experience, as we call it. And then like your emotions, when you share that through your speaking engagements or your film, there's women out there that are going, oh my God, I felt that way too. And I didn't, nobody else felt that way that was around me.
Well, that is so true, Wendy. That's such a valid point, because a lot of what we go through, we only discuss up here in our own mind. There's so much fear, shame, and guilt in sharing the thought processes, the feelings, all of it. And we are in a society that isn't as accepting to say, oh my gosh, Wendy, tell me what you're going through. How can I support you? It's more like, ooh, Wendy's going through stuff, guys. Like, and so it is very frightening, and it can make you feel extremely isolated. So there is a lot that happens there where people don't share, and then you can end up going to some very dark places. So my goal with speaking is to let you know, you are not alone. You are not crazy. This is very normal. It affects the CDC says 1 in 8 women. Really, I think it's more like 1 in 5 women, 1 in 10 men. And the more we can talk about it, the more we can connect on it and decimate the stigma, normalize the conversation. My goal is to make it like the breast cancer awareness. Like before, it's like you didn't want to discuss if you had this, or, oh my God, it was scary. Look at the work that's been done. It is celebrated. It's spoken about. There's a month dedicated to it. And we've normalized it. The same thing needs to happen with postpartum depression and perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Right.
Absolutely. Now, you made the film When the Bow Breaks, which is narrated by Brooke Shields, who also went through this. And I believe we do have a clip. So why don't we take a clip of Tanya Newbould's film, When the Bow Breaks.
Motherhood can be exciting. It can be a blessing. It can be a dream come true. But for 1 in 5 new mothers, it can be something else entirely.
Oh, I guess something's really wrong.
Women all over the world suffer from this, and it can occur to anybody.
There's a lot of surprises, a lot of things that nobody can prepare you for.
This singular thought just kept playing in my mind, which was, this girl would be better off with another woman as her mother.
I want a baby my whole life. And all of a sudden I have her and they bring her over to me and I'm like frozen.
I was very quiet and withdrawn. I thought, well, I can't tell anybody my secret.
The sleep deprivation was starting to get to her, and she took her own life.
I put a pillow over her face and just held it there until she stopped struggling.
How do we help these women from going through this?
That's why we're doing this, to educate.
We have a chance to make a difference and maybe save someone's life.
I felt like it was my fault because I didn't educate myself more.
Part of the depression is the guilt that goes along with it.
There's still so much stigma.
I think people forget that mental health is a sickness of the brain.
It's a huge issue that is not discussed.
We weren't made aware of all the risk factors, and Kelly actually had a lot of them.
Doctors are seeing more patients. It's easy for people to slip through the cracks.
When you hear about these things, you hear about how many red flags were up, it's shocking that we don't look at postpartum as something that's legitimate.
Everybody keeps a lid on it because shame or fear or judgment, but it's amazing when you share how many stories you hear back.
It's so scary when you're in it, but it does shift.
Like, wow, I'm not the only one. I'm not the first. I won't be the last.
I'm proud of her for speaking up. That takes a lot of strength.
If my wife's death can result in the prevention of other deaths, at least it wasn't in vain.
To be able to change the course of someone's life by just sharing my story, you can't even put it to words.
Incredible.
Wow.
Very powerful trailer.
Yes.
It's a very powerful trailer.
Of a very powerful subject.
Yes.
That goes unspoken so often.
Yeah.
So often. And 1 in 5, my God, that's what, 20%?
Oh yeah.
20% of pregnancies, my God.
No, it's a lot. And when we did the film, because I assumed I had it because I was older. I thought, it must be, it's because my body's older. And I really looked for a through line, and there isn't one. I will say it can happen at any age. It can happen with your first, not your second, not your first and your third. I mean, socioeconomic, it doesn't discriminate. It's not based on race, none of it. I will say, which breaks my heart, is the BIPOC community probably suffers more because there are less resources available.
Right.
Education. And I would love to see that shift because it's not fair. But it was very interesting to look like, why does this happen? What I found through the research we did and doing the documentary, the biggest through line I could find was lack of community. Because in the United States, it's really interesting. In Asia, they do what's called sitting moon, where the family comes around, the mother really doesn't even leave her bed for 30 days. They take the baby, they bring her in, they bring her food, they allow the body.
I love that.
Isn't it beautiful? It's through the cycle.
Sitting moon. Wow.
Sitting moon. So that the cycle of the moon goes through a full cycle before they get back on their feet.
And it's community and family.
Yeah.
Correct. And here in the United States, based on what we were talking about earlier, even with pregnancy, it's like, oh, you had your baby 2 weeks later, get out there, show them you're doing good, get back to work. Exercising, you don't need help. And so what ends up happening, and that was my experience, I was the oldest one of my friends in my friend circle at that time, that everyone tends to go, oh, I'm going to let you bond with your baby. We're going to leave you alone. I am here to tell you that is the worst thing you can do.
Wow. And thank you for saying that, really.
What you should be doing is phone call, text, knocking on the door. I'm coming over. I want to visit you. I'm going to hold that baby. I want you to go take a shower.
I'm going to
do a meal. I'm going to spend 20 minutes with you and be on my way. And you may know her, Jennifer Blanc or Jennifer Blanc Bean. She's an actress. A dear friend of mine at the time, was one of my saving grace because I was going through postpartum depression. She would come every morning with her styrofoam cup of coffee from the gas station.
I love that.
Stay for 30 minutes. And I lived for her to come for that time. My husband works in the corporate world, and he would have to go off. My gosh, my Pomeranian is barking at me, of course. And,
that's fine. We love dogs here. But bring the Pomeranian, bring the baby.
Oh my God, how beautiful.
Hello, cutie.
Gucci, can you be chill, please?
Gucci.
Well, listen, he came as Gucci. I was like, ooh, that's a pretentious name. And then we met him, and you can see.
No, he totally looks like a Gucci. It's interesting what you're saying because, and I know this about you. You had a colicky baby, so did I.
Oh, yes.
My husband was 14 years older than me. And I had read all those books, What to Expect When You're Expecting. I'm sure you read those. And they said
which is really a book. Yes.
If they're hungry or they need to be changed or they're tired. That is such a crock. You can get a baby that screams day and night. And after 2 weeks of it, my husband and I were laying in there, and he said to me, let's face it, we're too old and too selfish to deal with this. We have to hire I had a day baby nurse and a night baby nurse.
Oh, that's great.
We burnt through a ton of money. I was back working a few weeks later, and in my case, it was the smartest thing for me to do because, and I can share this with both of you. I'm very tight with my daughter now. I couldn't bond with this baby that no matter how much I tried to comfort her, I couldn't comfort her.
It's just a horrible feeling as a mother.
Horrible, Tanya.
Because as a mother, and all the fairy tales that we've seen throughout time is that we should be the one who's able to soothe them, to comfort them. And when you can't, oh my gosh, does it trigger, if you have any trauma, anything where you go into, I am not good enough, I'm not lovable, I can't do it,
I'm a failure.
I'm doing something wrong.
What's wrong with
the
me?
guilt. The guilt
is unbelievable.
Oh my God, I'm too old. Why did I have this baby at this age? What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? And what Artie Sakara said, I remember very specifically saying, this baby would be so much better off with a different mother. And I just finished my memoir. I'm working on the editing, and I had someone read it who didn't know me very well. And she came to me. She said, I was sobbing. What you went through, what you experienced. She said, that's unbelievable. And it is what I was meant to go through. So I'm very good with it. God had a plan for me to go through it so that I can help others. And I really want to express, we got 2 testimonials from our documentary recently that said, if it were not for your film, I would not be alive.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
I was like, that is why we made this film. That's how important this is, so that people can really identify that this is normal. You are not alone. And as Postpartum Support International says, with help, you will be okay. We'll talk about some of the different levels, so I don't want to jump ahead just yet, but there is so much help. There are so many resources available. And so we want to talk a little bit about those to help those who are listening.
I want you to share those going forward. Absolutely.
Absolutely. But again, back to like the biological, again, I, as a man, I can't imagine what you go through every month, let alone all of a sudden your body is shifting and you have this being inside of you that is growing and living off of you.
You can feel them moving too.
Oh, it's yes.
That whole change and that feel and the biological and the emotional and all of this. And you're constantly being told, oh, it's the most joyful time of your life. You should appreciate this. You should enjoy this, which I'm sure many aspects are very joyful. But they make it almost sound like, oh yeah, well, it's time to give birth. I just gave birth. Like, no, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
It's so much trauma to the body. And then you're expected to recover from it like this because you've got this little bundle of joy that can only bring you joy. That, again, the emotional, not being able to comfort the child and different things, you would just feel, which is added on to your body and biologically trying to heal itself.
Yes.
I can't imagine the depth of all of this. And again, each woman would be different. Child would be completely different to each one. But my goodness, when it goes south, it would really go south.
Well, and then the one thing, let's talk about, maybe you know the statistic, Tim, it's 1 out of every babies are stillborn in the United States of America that, the pregnancies, that completely blew me away. We're a modern country. We have a very high rate. Tanya, do you know what the rate is? Do you remember?
I don't. I'm glad you said that. I'm actually going to look for that. I had a friend who had a stillborn baby.
It's a very high rate. So you've got that on top of it. My birth was a nightmare. I was induced with Pitocin.
Let's talk about that. We find that is actually a factor in postpartum depression.
Tell me what you know about that, because my poor child coming down that birth canal was what a trauma with contractions that are like earthquakes for the mother, and then the baby. Everyone, it was insane, absolutely insane, and they wouldn't give me a painkiller. I had a midwife in a hospital. No
Oh.
epidural, nothing. I finally
Oh,
got
my goodness.
Demerol, and she said, "You shouldn't be doing this. You're going to end up with a C-section." And my husband, God bless him, said, "You can go F yourself." Give her the Demerol. She's been through enough. But this is a trauma with Pitocin and all of that. Tell me what you know about that.
So that was one of the factors that actually did show up more than once. The women who gave testimonials, a few of them who had Pitocin to induce it, is you're forcing your body to do something before it's ready. Now, let's be clear about this. Sometimes medically, it is time to get that baby out. But so I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. So I really want to be clear about that. I don't want to give a false message,
Right.
but it can be. So I'm more saying this as an awareness. It can be a factor that does create postpartum depression. Also, Wendy, you just said it. I had it. A traumatic birth is also a big factor that creates postpartum depression.
Right.
Yes.
Is that the what the body is going through, the trauma?
Yeah, I mean, the trauma for me, what happened, I chose to have a C-section because I was older. Truthfully, I probably could have pushed a baby out, very healthy human being, but I had fear around. I'm like, I have one baby, one chance. I
want to go smooth
to happen. So I want to make sure she comes out safe and sound.
Uh-huh.
So here's an interesting thing. When you cut the body, you numb it, you cut it open, you take the baby out, guess what the body thinks? The baby died.
Oh my God. I never thought about that.
Oh my God. Because it's being removed unnaturally.
Right. It's
naturally. So what happened is what
I
was
didn't
explained
either.
to me by a healer, that instead of pushing the depression out, because the body is supposed to go through this process, I went into depression.
Wow.
Because my body biologically didn't get to do what it was intended by nature.
So in a way, your body was in mourning.
Yes.
And so I became a zombie, and my body disassociated from this baby because my body my body, which is so crazy when you think about it, because I'm looking at her. I know she's here mentally, spiritually, but my body's like, baby's dead.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, very different way of looking at things, but I will tell you, it does make sense. And I was very fortunate. Yeah, I had no idea what was wrong with me. I literally thought I was crazy. My poor husband didn't know what to do, so he went into it as well. He's one of the 1 in 10.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a dear friend of mine, all my friends were very concerned about me. And Danielle Harris, who's also an actress, sat me down. She was my baby's godmother, and she was like in tears. And she said, "Something's wrong with you." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I had a baby. I'm tired." She's like, "No, something's wrong with you." And she loved me. So I knew she was saying it. I was like, then you get scared because you're like, "Oh my God, what is wrong with me?" Then I couldn't really find any information. And another dear friend of mine gave me Brooke Shields' book, Down King.
Yes. God bless her for writing the book.
Oh, such a brilliant book, which is why I'm writing my memoir for the same reason.
Absolutely.
People can identify. Her book was the first time I went, oh my God, I have postpartum depression. That's what I have.
There's a name for it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You can
when you have a name for it,
yes,
it lifts a whole the weight off the shoulders in a way.
Well, it does. You think it's
something.
Because you think
and you think you're the only one. You think like no one else has gone through this.
But I think what saddens me, we all have gynecologists that we go to. There's a whole medical field. I'm sure you took those birthing classes like the ones I took. We all do all of that. Why is this not being dealt with?
Absolutely.
Why is this not under this could happen? And I know we're going to talk about resources going forward. Where's that list of resources? I didn't have resources. I looked up, nannies, baby nurses. I called an agency because I knew my husband was right. We were too old, too selfish, and too sleep. I had no sleep. Yeah. And I stopped myself from going down the rabbit hole by hiring other people. And I remember my sister saying to me, "When are you and your husband going to be parents already?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, when I can deal with that. My daughter cried until she was 3.5 years old. I have to tell you, We went through a ton of money, but we only had one kid. And you know what, Tanya? It was money well spent because I had no support. My mom was too old. His mom, we had no support. You know, in the olden days, right? You had your auntie and uncle next door, and your and your 5 sisters.
Yeah,
You're like
exactly.
in the
Living on the
days of
block.
Little Women and Louisa May Alcott, or even where you're from in Indiana. But, you know, we're all in these different urban environments now. You were very lucky. Look at the friend that came with a cup of coffee. God bless her. But what if you don't have that?
What if you don't have that?
Yeah.
And also, once the way the documentary came about is once I knew what I had and I still couldn't find resources. Like I would call my daughter's pediatrician office and say, I'm not doing well. And they'd say, go for a walk. I'm like,
God. She's right.
That's leave my house. Like, are you kidding me right now?
I can't get dressed. I can't get out of bed.
Any of it. And so that's where I really went, there needs to be a documentary about this. And I was very, very fortunate. Jamie Lynn Littman, who's the director of our film and a phenomenal woman and director. She knows her stuff. She's so good at what she does. She had put me in one of her documentaries called Die Trying, about being an actor. And when we got done, I looked at her, I said, she had a 4-month-old baby. Mine was 6 months old. And I said to her, you know what? I have an idea for a documentary and I want you to direct it. And at the time, she was so nice. She said, I didn't really experience it. And I think she really registered the level of disappointment on my face. And she said, you know what? I'll tell you what, I'll post on a mommy blog. And if I get a response, I'll let you know. She called me 24 hours later. She said, Tanya, over 100 women said they would give their testimony. I think you're on to something.
Wow.
That's how we began.
Incredible.
Wow. Now, can you describe, there were, what was it, the 9
levels?
Yeah, the 9 levels. Yeah.
Yes. So I spoke of one, antenatal depression, which is in utero. Then there are baby blues, which definitely does affect about 80% of new mothers. Very normal. You might be weepy, sad, emotional, usually lasts about 2 to 3 weeks. Then you can go into what is called unipolar depression, which is more like the label of postpartum depression. So it's going beyond that time frame. You're struggling, you're having a hard time. Then there's, and so I had 7 out of 9 of these. Let's clarify that. Then there is postpartum anxiety. I had that every night when the sun would go down. My anxiety was like, oh God, another night. How am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to do this? Then there is postpartum PTSD, where it really triggers trauma that you've experienced. There is postpartum intrusive or obtrusive thoughts, which is where I also had that, which my reoccurring thought was taking my baby and throwing her off a balcony.
Wow.
It was horrifying because it would play over and
Oh
over
my God.
over again in my mind like a loop. Now I want to be clear. I never touched her. I never harmed her.
Right.
I did love her, but it was just this, like, I can't do this.
Right.
Like I think I heard myself say, I can't do this 1,000 times in the beginning of having a baby. So then there is also postpartum bipolar, which I didn't have, but that's where you can have like euphoria and you don't need sleep and you don't eat. And it's like this really high, but it's not a natural. It's like when you see people on drugs like that and you're like, this is a little weird and uncomfortable. Like that, this is a little not normal, right? Or it's the opposite. I can't get out of bed. I can't hold the baby. I can't talk to anyone. So it can be both. And then there's also postpartum psychosis, which affects 1 in 1,000 women, where you're having these very scary, unnatural thoughts. And you think, or you have what you think is prophetic, God talking to you, or the devil talking to you, kill the baby or harm yourself or do different things. And then you actually act on it. So that is a very,
That's so scary.
1 in 1,000, but it does occur. So when we see these stories in the news about she drowned her 5 kids, she did all these things. And I know as a human being, as a woman and as a mom, I was like, how could anyone do that? She's insane and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm here to tell you something. Any mother and woman in her right mind would never, and I mean ever, harm themselves, harm their baby, anything like that. So if that is occurring, it is because you are suffering from a very severe mental illness or mental condition. It does not mean it's permanent. I want to be clear about that. There is, again, help, but you need to go to a hospital immediately and check yourself. And you need to call someone and say, I'm having thoughts that are not normal, that are very scary. And I know it's hard because, again, I suffered it. You have so much shame and stigma and guilt. But if you are having thoughts on that level, do not sit with it, because it can be stopped. It can be prevented before it gets too late. And we have someone in our documentary that we interviewed who killed their baby and then instantly snapped out of it and regretted it.
Oh my God.
I can't. I know. I saw that in the trailer, and I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't wrap my head around that. And I felt so sorry for her. But then you think how society will judge that person.
How I judge that person. We went to film her in Arizona, and I literally was like, white trash, drugs, bad relationship. I mean, and I've gone through it, and I'm thinking these thoughts. We get there. Her parents are missionaries. She was a banker, the most lovely human being. The boyfriend did leave her, and she fell into psychosis. There was no history of severe abuse. There was none of that. So I want to be clear that this can affect anyone at any age, at any time, at any race, any socioeconomic. No one is segregated.
Right.
This is something that everyone needs to know about. This is why this film, rent it, buy it, share it, talk about it. iTunes, Amazon Prime, Google Play. This needs to get out there to the world.
Now, one area also that I just happened to think of in the process of pregnancy, with, again, like carrying the child and then giving birth to the child, is your life from that moment on is changed forever.
Yes.
So in addition to all of these things going on, you're experiencing a completely brand new experience, a life experience going forward.
With yourself and with your baby.
Right, exactly.
I also want to add in, Tim, because I think we also want to paint a very clear picture. The body does go back to normal. The baby, you do come out of this. The baby gets older. And then I am here to tell you, my daughter is my life. My daughter is the greatest joy, blessing, and gift I have ever received. She came here with part of her journey was the journey I went through so that I can affect change in the world. My body, I ended up thinking my body was so much more rocking because I did have a baby. I'm like, I got this going on. And okay. So there is so much joy that and we know this, even aging, no matter what we're experiencing, it shifts. We're meant to go through these different points in time with I look at my body now, like, don't do a yoga downward facing dog. I'm like, what is happening here? What's this happening over here? It just shifts. That's part of life. But the more we can embrace ourselves as we are in that moment with all of our flaws, our imperfections, the wrinkles, the crepey skin, the pregnancy body, the post-baby body, all of it will shift again. So that was part of my thinking. This is a great point. After I went through this, I thought, oh my God, this is my life for the rest of my life. I'm going to feel this way for the rest of my life. I'm going to mourn the loss of the life I knew. It will never be what it was. No, you're right. It won't be what it was. Guess what?
It's better.
Thank you.
Right.
It's better.
It's absolutely better. I want to throw into this mix the pressure of breastfeeding. I was a breastfeeding failure. Even though they came to visit me, I call them the breastfeeding police. They came to visit you in the hospital. You feel like hell. You've been through the ringer, and now the baby's not latching on. And you leave there, and that baby's not latching on. And you get home, the baby's screaming day and night, and not latching on. Oh, here you are. You're a failure again.
Absolutely.
I found a formula called Nutramigen for colicky babies.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. But I was judged by more than a few moms that had their babies at this, and they were all breastfeeding. And I was drying up. I was getting my boobs back to where they were.
Yeah.
And my daughter had colic, but it was less when she had the Nutramigen.
Yes.
And they say, and Tanya will tell you this, breast is best.
Mhm.
Well, for mothers that it works for, I guess that's true. It wasn't great for me.
It wasn't great for me either. I will say this, which is important for women to know. They say after about 3 weeks, you have downloaded every antibody that baby needs to survive. From that point on, you're really a food source. So if it's not working for you, there's no shame in not doing it. And yeah, at the La Leche League, I think is what they're called.
But
They would go against me and say, you're wrong, you're wrong. It does create more bonding. I loved breastfeeding, but I never could pump more than 2 ounces. I just never produced a lot, no matter, I did the fenugreek tea. I did all the things that never changed. And about 4.5 months postpartum, Ava quit breastfeeding and I was devastated. I cried. What's wrong with me? Yeah. And my husband was so kind. He said, babe, it's okay. And honestly, that's my depression went away because I had postpartum depression for about 6 months, 5.5 months.
Wow.
It cleared up after that because I started to get back more into a normal routine of life. And there's another formula, and I want to say it's called amlactin, which also is for colicky babies. She became much happier and she was thriving a lot more. And then we had more of a cohesive life. And I could fall in love with being a mother instead of
Thank you. It enabled you to fall in love with being a mother.
Yes.
Isn't that what it's about at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter how you get there. That's I want you to talk a little bit about the support groups because we're having the conversation, but I think out there, this is not known for the most part.
You're absolutely right. So to me, the strongest resource, there's several, but the strongest and most well-known resource is Postpartum Support International, PSI, they're known as. They have a warm line and a texting line, which means you can reach out to them and someone will get back to you within 24 hours. They also do have excellent resources for the BIPOC community. They're very protective of new moms. They have no judgment. There's also Maternal Mental Health Now, which is another phenomenal organization. I actually created a candle and diffuser and roller oil line called Sozo Heart. And Sozo is a Greek word for redemption and revival when you're in SOS. So it's a perfect word. And my candles and diffusers have a higher amount of essential oil to help create a sense of all is well and grounding well-being. And 10% of the proceeds I give to Maternal Mental Health Now. So I'm supporting in that way. So these are some excellent resources. Also, your pediatrician, they are part of what I want to get changed in legislation, and is to have interviews in the pediatrician office, your gynecologist, your OBGYN, because we all tend to, and it's very normal. Oh, how's the baby? Oh, the baby. No one looks, I look into a mother's eyes and I go, how are you?
Yeah.
And they sometimes look, they're like, oh, thank you for asking. We don't ask that enough.
There are no pediatrician, no guy. I'm telling you, the pediatricians really, to me, fall short of this. It's like
they just don't know. I will defend that because it's true. My pediatrician said, and I'm an actress, I go in there acting like everything's fine. She said, Tanya, I had no idea you were navigating this. There is more awareness now. There are more, I am now on occasion seeing, how are you doing? Have you had any thoughts of harming yourself? So it is becoming more available, which is phenomenal, but it needs to become mainstream and it needs to become required.
I totally agree. Tanya, when you came out with this film, did you get any negative pushback from people? Because you've gone in an area where people don't go.
No, actually, I can, if you go to our website, whenthebowelbreaksfilm.com, we have a lot of press, a lot of articles on there. And I've done many, many interviews and podcasts and speaking engagements. And it's always, in my viewpoint, been a very welcome thing to be expressed because there's not enough information, and our documentary is considered the gold standard. So again, watch it, rent it, Amazon Prime, iTunes, Google Play. It is something that needs to become more of an open conversation because that's how we're going to help heal this. And the truth is, collectively, we are all connected to each other energetically. And I'll tell you, being out here in LA with the fires, there is a collective sadness and devastation because so many people have lost everything. So even though I did not, I am very sad.
Surrounded,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, surrounded, absolutely.
Well, our prayers are with you and everyone there in LA right now.
That
because that is so devastating.
And what you're doing with this film has to be out there in a big way. There should be women's groups showing this. There should be, these pregnancy classes. They should be. My God, why is this not distributed through all these natural childbirth classes that we take? And
we're working on that. We are definitely, and we're also working on having like a Netflix buy it or a mainstream television.
I'm hoping, absolutely,
so that they show. And that's why, if anyone needs me to come speak, I speak on this all of the time because I really, that is my legacy in this lifetime is to really help women. That's where I kind of let acting go and move more into this because acting I love, but it's look at me, where this is more about how can I support and be of service to you.
Oh my God, yeah. It's definitely the higher good.
So I highly recommend everyone go to whenthebellbreaksfilm.com or TanyaNewbould.com.
It's a lot on her website
to find out more information on this extremely important.
Absolutely. And follow me on social media. I talk about this at Tanya Newbould. I would love to have you follow me and, love to hear any comments or questions. And
Tanya, one last thought before we go. I was thinking while we were talking, you were adopted. You don't know what your birth mother's experience was. I do know my mother had a tumultuous pregnancy with me. They removed a tumor and they removed me, and I was born with club feet.
Oh, wow.
My mother was already way on in years, but now we've discussed all of this, and my mother had me late too. I wonder what that connection is in our own genetics, right? You have a daughter. I have a daughter. I do wonder. It's like she said to me the other day, she's early 30s, maybe I'll, as I get older, freeze my eggs. And I said to her, I'm like, oh, I don't think you should do that. And this is terrible. Don't hate me for this. I said, I think it's a huge mistake to wait till you're in your very late 30s or early 40s to have a kid. They need to stop telling people that. And I'm sure there are people that are going to jump all over me for that. But you know what? I don't know. It's great. I don't think it's great.
Well, here's why I say it's not great from a personal perspective.
Thank you.
I will not be on this planet with my daughter as long as I would like to be.
Yes.
Because I'm older.
Yeah. Same.
It's just reality. I won't be here as long as I could. Like if I had her at 23 instead of 43 or even 33 instead of 43, I won't be with her as long as I would like to be. I don't ever want to leave her.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I do think, and also energetically, we have more energy when we're younger. You roll with it easier. You don't have as much baggage, as much trauma when you're younger. So
head's tough,
right? So all of that comes into play. But then there's beautiful things for both. I mean, I would say I'm probably a better mom because I'm older and I have experienced more life. And so I have a different perspective. Plus I'm a coach. So there's beauty in all of it. I say all of it's a gift, but definitely. And also because I have one, I'm a big advocate for have more than one.
I would have to say now there's a lot of times I thought about that. Yeah. And there we have it.
Well, Tanya Newbould, thank you so very much for taking the time and coming on and sharing your expertise and the film and everything. So once again, go to whenthebellbreaksfilm.com and also TanyaNewbould.com.
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to give one final shout out to Lindsay Gerst, who is also our producer, executive producer. And actually, she was the through line to the film. She was phenomenal. We could not have done the film without her. And it's just important that I acknowledge that. and Jamie Lynn, and just how wonderful they are. And I was so blessed to have such an amazing team.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and Brooke Shields. Thank you, Brooke.
Yay,
Thank you,
Tanya.
everyone.
Now the credits are going to roll, but don't sign off because we want to come back and take a picture.
We take a picture.
Please, I would love that.
Just hang out. Don't leave the stream.
But thank you everyone for tuning into If These Walls Could Talk with our fabulous guest, Tanya Newbould.
Yay!
Thank you.